high-level peace negotiations between the United States and Iran have begun in Islamabad, marking a critical diplomatic effort to end the ongoing conflict. Pakistan has played a central role in facilitating these talks, which are considered among the most important in recent years. The American negotiating team is traveling to Pakistan amid intense global attention. In Islamabad, authorities have made extensive preparations for the arrival of both delegations. Major streets in the city, home to more than 1 million people, have been cleared. A 2-day public holiday has been declared, and security forces are visibly deployed along key routes. Pakistan's ambassador to the United States, Rizwan Saeed Sheikh, sat down for an exclusive interview to discuss the developments. When asked how Pakistan managed to bring Iran and the United States to agree on a ceasefire in these talks, Ambassador Sheikh explained that diplomacy involves no single magic word. Instead, it is a gradual process that demands patience, perseverance, and persistent effort. He noted that these elements define the intense diplomatic activity over recent weeks, which included many ups and downs. The breakthrough came through constructive and positive engagement, carried out by Pakistan not only on its own but in consultation with several international partners. What highlighted Pakistan's contribution, he said, was the confidence that all parties placed in the country. The ambassador was asked about influences from Gulf Cooperation Council countries in bringing both sides to the table. He responded that the engagement was marked by a constructive spirit and positive influences from various quarters rather than pressure. Pakistan has positioned itself at the center of these negotiations as a facilitator and mediator. When asked how success in these talks could be defined from a diplomatic perspective, Ambassador Sheikh replied that the very fact that the talks are taking place represents a major success. Diplomacy has been given an opportunity, and history shows that matters unresolved on the battlefield are ultimately settled through dialogue. There is widespread hope worldwide that the conflict will end soon, and considerable expectations rest on Pakistan to help achieve that outcome. Regarding the format of the negotiations, the ambassador said all options remain open. Similar talks between the two sides have occurred in the past, and various formats can be drawn upon. He advised against setting preconditions or making premature judgments, emphasizing that the process should flow according to the comfort level of the conflicting parties. Multiple choices exist in such negotiations, and they may all be utilized as needed. On potential challenges, particularly Israeli military actions in Lebanon, the ambassador stressed that with delegations expected in Islamabad very soon, possibly already en route, the focus should not be on derailment. Both sides have demonstrated commitment by designating and dispatching their teams. However, he noted that the overall atmosphere is important. Any agreed frameworks must be implemented, and deviations or external untoward incidents could cast a negative shadow on the process. When asked about the timeline and Pakistan's readiness to continue facilitating even at a lower level for as long as necessary, Ambassador Sheikh reiterated that diplomacy is a gradual process. While quick decisions may sometimes be needed, Pakistan, like any responsible facilitator, stands ready to support the effort for however long it takes. The country values the trust placed in it and is committed to going the full distance. The U.S. delegation includes officials with prior experience in indirect negotiations with Iran, such as presidential advisors Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the commander of U.S. Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper. A notable addition is Vice President J.D. Vance, who was brought in hastily as chief negotiator after being recalled from Hungary. Iran had reportedly preferred engaging with Vance over other figures. Before departing, Vice President Vance said the team was looking forward to the negotiations and hoped they would be positive. He stated that if Iran negotiates in good faith, the United States would extend an open hand. However, if attempts were made to take advantage, the team would not be receptive. He added that the president had provided clear guidelines. There is evident political pressure on the U.S. administration. Although the White House has denied that domestic political considerations played a role, economic concerns, rising costs, and the approaching midterm elections appear to be significant factors. Adding Vice President Vance is seen by some as an effort to increase the chances of a successful outcome and provide an off-ramp from the conflict. For nearly 40 days, Iran faced more than 13,000 attacks aimed at destroying its military capabilities and related industrial infrastructure. The civilian death toll from the bombardment is estimated to possibly exceed 3,000. While such losses are unlikely to directly sway Iranian negotiators, reaching a deal could help revive Iran's economy, which has been severely strained by international sanctions. The threat of further financial measures remains a factor. Iran, however, holds leverage through its actions in the Strait of Hormuz, a vital global oil choke point. By effectively restricting passage, Iran has impacted oil flows from Gulf states, hurting business, tourism, and economies in the region, which in turn has increased calls for a swift deal. Once the conflict ends, the strait is expected to reopen naturally as Iran seeks to sell oil to support reconstruction. destruction. Despite earlier downplaying the effects, the Trump administration faces a cost of living crisis, with sharply higher fuel prices affecting food and other sectors. This has drawn criticism even from within Republican ranks, adding to pressure ahead of the midterm. Anti-war sentiment is also growing, making resolution a priority for the White House. Two former senior U.S. diplomats joined the discussion: Douglas Silliman, who served as ambassador to Kuwait and Iraq, and Barbara Leaf, former ambassador and assistant secretary of state for Near Eastern affairs. When asked whether the Iranian and U.S. teams would sit in the same room, Ambassador Silliman noted the lack of sufficient trust built so far. He observed that previous Omani-mediated talks used shuttle diplomacy, passing messages between rooms, and hoped the process would eventually move to direct face-to-face talks. Ambassador Leaf described the atmosphere as charged, reflecting Iran's insistence since 2018 on avoiding direct talks with U.S. officials following the withdrawal from the Iran nuclear accord. She noted that Vice President Vance's recent remarks appeared intended to ease tensions slightly, though the stakes remain very high. Regarding signs of progress or trouble, Ambassador Silliman suggested watching whether peripheral irritants subside, such as Israeli actions in Lebanon, attacks by Iraqi militias on U.S. or Kurdish targets, inflammatory rhetoric, or continued Iranian activities in the Gulf. He pointed out that both sides may enter without fully defined strategic goals and could assess concessions during the process. Ambassador Leaf highlighted additional complications, including a reported Iranian demand for the unfreezing of assets as a condition to begin talks, alongside the de facto blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. Despite these issues, delegations are proceeding, maintaining cautious hope. Both experts agreed that the mere occurrence of the talks is itself a success, as armed conflicts rarely end in total victory for one side. Compromise is necessary, and both Washington and Tehran have strong incentives to conclude the war quickly. The key will be identifying overlap in positions and determining what each side is willing to concede. Comparing these negotiations to past ones, such as the JCPOA talks over a decade ago, Ambassador Silliman noted that the U.S. previously fielded a large team with strong technical expertise, Persian speakers, and intelligence support. He expressed concern that the current American team, led by Vice President Vance, may lack similar depth, while the Iranian delegation, including experienced figures like Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf with IRGC background, the Foreign Minister, and Deputy Foreign Minister, appears robust and well prepared. This could place the U.S. side at a relative disadvantage in experience. Ambassador Leaf agreed that a fuller delegation with technical experts would be preferable for extended talks, suggesting the initial round might serve as a test of the waters, after which more specialized support could be brought in. On pressures facing the United States, the continued closure of the Strait of Hormuz has driven fuel prices to their highest levels since 2022. Market instability from the war has affected approval ratings, raising concerns about the midterm elections. A failed negotiation could lead to a prolonged conflict with rising human and financial costs. When asked about U.S. priorities, Ambassador Silliman said the main goal for President Trump appears to be ending the fighting, easing economic pressure, and lowering gas prices quickly to appeal to voters. This might involve seeking an early declaration of success on issues such as highly enriched uranium enrichment activities or reopening the strait. Ambassador Leaf identified the Strait of Hormuz as the defining pass-fail issue. Any continued closure, managed opening, or conditions would have severe economic consequences at home, with impacts expected to intensify over the coming weeks. The experts discussed how the strait, which was not even on the table before the war, has now become Iran's most significant strategic achievement in the conflict. By simply issuing warnings to tankers and insurers, without major military action, Iran has effectively closed the waterway, demonstrating a powerful tool with global economic implications. Reopening it without U.S. concessions will be a major challenge. Iran is unlikely to relinquish this leverage easily. The regime, having survived intense strikes, now feels more emboldened and possesses a new deterrent. At the same time, Tehran urgently needs economic relief through sanctions relief. Possible areas for negotiation include access to and removal of highly enriched uranium, limits on enrichment, restrictions on support for proxy forces, drone production, and ballistic missiles. Proxies might be addressed through separate channels, but ballistic missiles could prove especially difficult. The U.S. holds cards in the form of sanctions that can be eased conditionally. On the prospects of a full deal within the initial period, both diplomats expressed doubt that a comprehensive agreement would emerge in the first 2 weeks. However, if sufficient progress occurs, talks are likely to continue with more detailed discussions, possibly requiring strengthened technical team. The urgent priority is securing a mechanism to keep the Strait of Hormuz fully and unconditionally open. Close behind is addressing the nuclear program through a clear roadmap for further negotiations. Both experts saw a possibility that the strait could reopen within this initial window, though Iran could reverse such a move quickly. They emphasized that diplomacy diplomacy requires patience and sustained effort, with assurances and commitments playing a key role. These talks represent a pivotal moment in efforts to resolve the US-Iran conflict through negotiation rather than prolonged military confrontation. The coming days will test whether both sides can bridge deep differences and move toward a lasting peace.